On July 1, 1951, Dr. Richard Reeser Jr. visited his mother, Mary Reeser, at her apartment in St. Petersburg, Florida. He kissed her goodbye around 9 p.m. The next morning, her landlord tried to deliver a telegram but found the metal door handle too hot to touch. When police and firefighters arrived, they found Mary in her chair, both mostly ash. The fire was somehow contained to Mary's body and chair. A nearby stack of newspapers was untouched, the sheets on her bed were white and crisp, and most of her walls were clean. Even more curious, Mary's skull remained intact, but was shrunken to the size of a teacup. Eventually, the FBI was brought in, and after months of investigation, declared she died from spontaneous combustion. The case remains a mystery to this day. We've all heard horror stories of feuding neighbors, but nothing is quite as tragic, shocking, and outrageous as when Marvin Heemeyer went on a rampage through his small Colorado town. It began as a zoning dispute that caused Marvin to lose his muffler business. When it became clear the entire town had no intention of working with him, he began secretly converting a bulldozer into an impenetrable tank. On June 4, 2004, Marvin drove his armored bulldozer through the town and began systematically destroying the homes and businesses of everyone he felt wronged him. Police fired over 200 rounds of ammunition and launched 3 explosives with zero effect on the dozer. Marvin ended up demolishing 13 buildings before the vehicle became high-centered on a basement. Sadly, he committed suicide before police could breach the tank and arrest him. To say people were desperate in the midst of the Great Depression is an understatement. But no one took that desperation to such extreme lengths as Tony Marino, operator of a speakeasy in the Bronx. Working with a corrupt insurance agent in June of 1932, Marino began taking out life insurance policies against his frequent clients, setting them up with alcohol credits to help them drink themselves to death. Their first target was Michael Malloy. But when Malloy's health didn't deteriorate, Marino began adding antifreeze to the booze. When that didn't work, he added turpentine, horse liniment, rat poison, a sandwich laced with metal shavings, ran him over with a taxi, and poured 5 gallons of cold water on him while he was passed out in the snow. Eventually, they forced gas down his throat with a hose until he died. But word of Iron Mike reached the insurance company, who had the body exhumed, sending Marino and his accomplices to the electric chair in 1934. In 2005, residents of the quiet, affluent town of Cape Elizabeth, Maine, experienced a series of unsettling crimes. In August, a resident woke up to a man inside their bedroom staring at them. The man fled as soon as he was spotted, and there was nothing in the home stolen, destroyed, or otherwise moved, and no one was harmed in any way. This kept happening to resident after resident throughout the entire month of August. The break-ins stopped, only to reoccur in December, and again in February. Many residents claimed to know the man, only to have different men named, and none of them could be connected to the break-ins. After February of 2006, the intrusions stopped altogether and haven't happened since. The case remains unsolved. A little after 1:30 p.m., a small pizzeria in Erie, Pennsylvania, received a delivery order to a transmitting tower on the edge of town. When delivery driver Brian Wells went there, 2 strangers forced a bomb collar around Wells' neck at gunpoint. He was given a homemade shotgun and a 9-page note, ordering him to rob a bank and complete a series of timed tasks to collect the keys needed to disarm the bomb he was wearing. At 2:30 p.m., Wells walked into the PNC Bank and gave the teller a note demanding $250,000. He walked out with a little over $8,000. 15 minutes later, Wells completed the first task when police arrested him. At 3:18 p.m., on live television, the bomb detonated. In the following months, 2 more bodies showed up, leading authorities to Marjorie Deal Armstrong and Kenneth Barnes, who were arrested and convicted of masterminding this bizarre crime. In 1986, 16-year-old Annie and Jessica Andrews ran screaming from their Townsend, Massachusetts, home, believing their deceased mother was haunting them. They claimed a séance went wrong when they found a message written in blood on their basement wall. But when their father went into Annie's room to prove they weren't being haunted, he found a young man dressed in his late wife's clothing, donning her makeup and a blonde wig, and holding a hatchet. The boy disappeared, and when police searched the home, they found 16-year-old Danny LaPlante crouched in the crawlspace between the walls. The teen had been living inside the walls of their home for months, even carving peepholes so he could spy on the family. Unfortunately, the case took a tragic turn after he was released from juvenile hall when he broke into another house and brutally murdered a mother and her 2 children. There's now evidence he lived in the walls of other homes before he turned violent. November 19, 1990, began as a normal morning for wealthy businessman John Grundhofer. But when he got to the parking garage for his office building, things got weird. A man was waiting for Grundhofer. At gunpoint, he handcuffed dynamite to his arm, forced him back into his car, and ordered him to drive to Wisconsin. In addition to witnesses, he dropped a note listing his demands, including one for a $3 million ransom delivered in $1,000 bills. When he realized his note was gone, he tied Grundhofer up, gagged him, and left him in a sleeping bag at a rest stop. No one was ever arrested, and recent theories have surfaced that Grundhofer staged the whole thing to garner public sympathy. The case remains unsolved. In February 1987, Alan and Deborah Tallman bought a bunk bed from a second-hand furniture store. But when they put it in their daughter's room, it began a hellish 9 months for the family. All 3 children started getting sick frequently. They claimed their clock radio came to life, their room would burst into flames only to vanish, and that a red-eyed witch was watching them. A month later, these events began affecting Alan and Deborah. Doors would slam, voices would yell, ghostly apparitions kept appearing, the garage burst into ghost flames, and items were thrown across the room. When they destroyed the bunk bed, all paranormal activity stopped. They sold the home 2 months later, and the new family has never reported any strange events. Donating the remains of a deceased loved one isn't unheard of, and there are numerous non-profit research centers that offer this service. But when 15 severed human heads were found on a domestic flight, the FBI launched an investigation. In January 2014, agents raided the Biological Research Center and found a scene straight out of a horror movie. In the facility, often dubbed the human chop shop, they found buckets of heads, arms, and legs, a cooler full of male genitalia, bodies dismembered with chainsaws, and a woman's head sewn onto a male torso like Frankenstein. The owner, Stephen Gore, pled guilty to conducting an illegal business and was ordered to pay over $50 million in damages. While the facility was connected to a multi-state operation of the illegal trafficking and sale of human body parts, Gore has yet to explain the condition of the bodies. In 1833, Antoine Leblanc was disowned by his wealthy French family and was determined to make his fortune in the United States. He settled in Morristown, New Jersey, where he was hired by a local judge to do manual labor. Unhappy with this turn of events, he murdered everyone on the farm and robbed them. A judge ordered him to be hung, and his body ended up being used in medical experiments involving electrical currents. His skin was then turned into leather souvenirs for locals. It was believed that all of this was a macabre urban legend until his death mask and coin purses made of flesh were found in a storage shed. It's now believed his remains are all over Morristown, hidden by families who reveled in revenge.